Auzubillahiminashaitanirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Ji ayanu bakhaira ghaleni hao chunishume washmale. Ohai gozaimis guten morgen. Hola bonjour privet kaifahal. Hale shumachatore ahlan wa sahlan marhaba. Buna mucho gracias. Swabi balli kare aaya. Hoş geldin and ayo say khuyamora chivatto chi hal jot kali mera khairutan. And a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into Pakistan TV and watching World this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, I happen to be Shahzad Khan, and with me, I'm really lucky that I've been joined by my wonderful colleague, who happens to be Miss Eesha, Rehan. We hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well and that you're ready to kickstart your day with us. It's a fine Tuesday morning over here in Islamabad. It's sunny, but it's still cold. But first things first. Hello, Eesha. Assalamu alaikum. How are you feeling today?
I feel absolutely great, Shahzad, and it was very nostalgic to hear your old introduction, greeting all the people across the world. I'm sure everyone in their screens watching is really, really happy to witness it once again. And talking about witnessing things, we are witnessing one of the coldest ever autumn seasons in Pakistan. You know, for the past 2 days, Shahzad, I was shivering all night, and last night I actually was engulfed in 2 blankets because I was not well. I was sick. However, you know, this is a reminder for everyone to stay safe and make sure to take out your warm clothes. Do not rely on the fact that maybe Pakistan gets colder in November. However, it is a very, very chilly October. So please stay safe.
And while we were speaking about, the chilly September, ladies and gentlemen, I think what we're really to kind of say over here is that I think, is it October or September?
It's October.
Thank you. So thank you for that correction, Eesha. But very quickly, let's get started with the stories that I've brought and the stories that Eesha has brought. First up, ladies and gentlemen, obviously it's history in the making. The Honorable Prime Minister Mian Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif is visiting Malaysia, and the kind of views which have been coming in from Malaysia has been very optimistic and positive. And in addition to this, adding on, Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has expressed the firm commitment to promote trade and investment relations with Pakistan. Addressing Pakistan Malaysia Business and Investment Conference in Kuala Lumpur, he said they will facilitate and support the enterprises to achieve the objective. Not just that, Prime Minister addresses business conference boosts Pakistan-Malaysia trade. Prime Minister Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif and Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim addressed the business and investment conference in Kuala Lumpur, underscored the importance of enhancing bilateral trade and strengthening economic cooperation between Pakistan and Malaysia. That's the first story that we will be building up on. We built up on it yesterday as well. But let's see what Eesha has brought to the table.
All right, so our second story revolves around an integral issue. All eyes of the world are on Egypt right now, where negotiations are taking place between Hamas, Israel, and international mediators such as the United States and Qatar are in Egypt, calling it the most serious attempt yet to reach a truce. U.S. President Donald Trump has urged negotiators to move fast towards an agreement, warning that delays could have dire consequences. The UN says it's ready to surge into Gaza with lots of aid, with thousands of tons of supplies. Meanwhile, the world's attention remains sharply focused on climate activist Greta Thunberg, who has been recently deported from Israel. And in Europe, pro-Palestinian demonstrations and protests are being carried out. A mass number of protests are sparking global debates about how pressure is being built on Israel to unfold and relinquish the situation.
Exactly, and just adding to Isha's story, we do believe that 171 detainees of the Summit Flotilla have been released by Israel, and they say that that the conditions that they were kept in weren't really very humane. We will build up on that as well, and towards the last segment of the show, obviously because it's the ICC Women's World Cup, which is underway as of now. Just yesterday it was South Africa versus New Zealand, where South Africa women won by 6 wickets, and I think that the credit really needs to be given to the South Africa women for building up a partnership right top of the order. May it be Tasmin Brits with 101 or St. Luce with 83. I think that did the work for South Africa women, and making sure that they're going to emerge victorious by 6 wickets with 55 balls remaining. So the quality of cricket, we'll speak about it towards the end of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us because we are heading out towards a short break. As soon as you come back, we will be talking about the hallmark visit of the Honorable Prime Minister to Malaysia and the kind of trade deals that have been taking place and how the private sector needs to play a role. Right after this short break, don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
All right, welcome back to all the people who stay tuned to stay informed. Just before taking a break, we were discussing about this truce between Malaysia and Pakistan, how the bilateral relations between these two countries are progressing. We have reached a very progressive milestone for both countries, and to unfold how Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is in talks with the Prime Minister of Malaysia and how they are going to help the economies, the infrastructure, the IT departments, and halal meat exports in Pakistan, out of Pakistan, to actually unfold in Malaysia. To discuss more about this, we actually have a former ambassador in studios with us today. He happens to be Nasir Ali Khan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Very good morning. It's wonderful to see you, and for me to kind of always come across you, and as a very well dressed and a dapper gentleman is something which I take advantage of. In fact, I'm going to take advantage of today as well. First things first, sir. Let's to get our conversation started. We do know about the 2007 agreement, which was signed in between Malaysia and Pakistan, but this hallmark event which has been taking place and how the Honorable Prime Minister was being received and the kind of honor he was given by his Malaysian counterpart. What do you have to say about all of this? And then we'll move on towards, what sort of memorandums of understandings and agreements have taken place.
Well, as you said, this was an exceptional welcome that was given with a lot of protocol. Although we've had relations ever since Malaysia was granted independence in 1957. And then our people-to-people contacts go back almost 150 years. Because at that time, between 1880 and 1930, the British colonialists brought a lot of people from this part of the world, from Punjab, from KP, because they wanted to recruit them for the Malayan police and the colonial armed forces over there. These people, when in 1957, most of them stayed back. So there's a very large community there. Apart from that, there are people now who have moved to Malaysia, either as executives in banks and other large corporations, or in different small and medium enterprises. So as far as this government is concerned, not only in the case of Malaysia, but you must have seen that our profile has been enhanced in the last few years. And obviously that is not only a positive development, but it seems that Pakistan is attracting attention from all across the world now. And it is being engaged with in different parts of the world. So this is part of that, in my opinion.
Exactly. And sir, in addition to this, because you have touched base with that as well, let's speak about that. This diplomatic ascent that we see in recent times is something where, I'll probably ask Eesha, to kind of pinch me, because it's something that we might not have seen all our lives. And for now, alhamdulillah, to see that, that there's this Honorable Prime Minister who's so vibrant, who's so optimistic, and who's so passionate that he certainly wants to bring Pakistan to the A-listers. And that's exactly that we witness now. What different do you think that the Honorable Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is doing than the all foreign or the former Prime Ministers might not have done?
Well,
it's a tough question
that's as I was saying, that's a little difficult to say, because one can't make direct comparisons between past governments and the conditions that they faced. But there are 2 or 3 factors. Lately, I have noticed that China has come full scale and openly in favor of Pakistan, and they have clearly stated, for example, that any threat to the sovereignty or territorial integrity of Pakistan will not be tolerated by China at all. Before this, it may have been a tacit understanding, but today, in the recent skirmish with India, we have seen that there has been a lot of coordination, and we have successfully repelled an illegal invasion into our territory. So that, especially in the Middle Eastern countries, has created a lot of respect for Pakistan, and they give us greater attention. Apart from that, the conditions in Israel and the way that Israel behaves as a rogue state, not caring at all, flouting all international laws, has put the Middle East, and especially the Gulf countries, after the attack on Qatar, in a mode where they need to look for other security partners. True. Because, there is a very large air base in Qatar, and despite that, Israeli missiles attacked a so-called major ally. So that shows that one cannot rely on this rogue state in the region. And although our talks with the Saudis were going on for a long time, and we also have a history of military cooperation going back 5 to 6 decades, but now I think they very quickly gave shape to this and signed this accord, which is very important in the sense that the wording, if you see, is very similar to Article 5 of NATO, for instance, that an attack on either one of our countries will be taken as an attack on both of us.
All right, thank you so much for emphasizing that and speaking about this matter that the world needs to know. And in speaking about Pakistan's progress, the Honorable Prime Minister actually mentioned how Pakistan's economy is doing brilliantly well. Our inflation rate dropped from 36% to single digits, and our interest rate dropped from 22% to 11%. How do you think this collaboration with Malaysia is going to actually boost our economy and give it that little push that we need?
Well, for a start, the biggest thing that's come out of this meeting is that the Malaysian government has allocated a quota of $200 million for the import of halal beef from Pakistan. But we have to be a little cautious in the sense that, you see, the total import of Malaysia is about less than $700 million. You will be surprised to realize that about 85% to 90% of this import is actually buffalo meat from India. Now, this is, when we talk about international competition, it's not that the Malaysian government has said that we will compel our importers to import 200 million worth of beef from Pakistan. We still have to compete. So that is a very important thing. Now, what are the advantages that the Indians have over us, for instance? As far as the price is concerned, they are not exporting cow beef. They are exporting buffalo beef. And it's interesting to note that buffalo beef is a byproduct of the leather industry in India.
Yeah.
So they are able, if you have a byproduct, you can reduce prices because rather than throw it away, essentially you're freezing it and exporting it to a country like Malaysia. But at the same time, you have to realize that the Indian community in Malaysia, which is about 6%, 6 to 7%, are very nationalistic in that sense. So as businessmen in Malaysia, they give preferences to trade with India. And that's where people-to-people contact also comes in vis-a-vis Pakistan and Malaysia. As I said to you earlier, we have a large community there that has been not only settled there for almost 145 years, but we also have people who are very influential over there. And the Malays have a very soft spot or a lot of goodwill as far as Pakistanis or people of Pakistani origin are concerned. This has to be leveraged to help us promote our exports. And of course, the other thing that will be challenging is to come up to international halal certification standards. And when I say that, it's not that our industry is unable to do this. We already have 3 or 4 large companies like Al-Shahir, like Zenith, like PK Livestock that are exporting to different countries, including the Middle East. But an important thing is there's an organization called JAKIM in Malaysia, which basically will certify, will inspect,
authenticate,
and not just once. Periodically, the certification will be for 2 or 3 years. They can have surprise checks in between of your setup, of the hygiene aspect, the ethics aspect, and the truly Islamic way of slaughtering the animals. So at that point, we have to be very, very careful. But once we get certification from JAKIM, it is considered such a high standard that we can easily export to neighboring countries.
Exactly. So it won't just restrict to Malaysia, then it can go to other countries. And thank you so much, sir, for mentioning that. And this is where, actually for all of those entrepreneurs or business person really needs to come in, or the private sector needs to come in, because addressing the Pakistan-Malaysia Business and Investment Conference, the Honorable Prime Minister did mention that the government is supposed to play a role of an enabler, and then it's the private sector which needs to come in and jump in as well. So for all of these organizations that you've named who are already into this business, How do you think that they now really need to come in and make sure, hey, you know what, thank you so much, Pakistan government, you've enabled us, now let us do it?
Well, I don't entirely agree with that, because if you look at the success story of Malaysia, there was a great government intervention
Okay.
when Prime Minister Mahathir came into power in 1981. He decided on 2 or 3 important things. And that has a big role to play in the growth of Malaysia as an economy.
True.
Because what he did in 1981, he decided on a look east policy, first of all. He decided on moving away. Essentially, at that time, primarily, Malaysia used to be a resource-based economy. So what that means is whatever natural resources they had, they would export those to the rest of the world and make their foreign exchange from that. So that included palm oil, it included rubber, it included tin, and to some extent oil and gas.
Okay.
Now he wanted to shift away from this, because whenever you do this, you can never grow to a world scale economy, essentially because you're not adding value to your product. So his focus was on industrialization. And the other thing he wanted to do, he wanted Malaysian industry to emulate the tigers of Asia. So these were Japan and Korea and Taiwan.
True.
So, you know, he wanted to promote that work ethic, that level of training and that level of industrialization, because as those economies became richer, their labor became more and more expensive. So Malaysia was able to invite those industries that were labor intensive to come and have their industry in Malaysia and take advantage of a well-trained labor force. And when I say well-trained, again, government intervention comes in. It was a policy of the government to spend more money on education and on technology. So Pakistan government has to do that as well.
Exactly, and where we speaking of it, thank you so much, you know, because this exactly brings me to these crossroads, you know, where I would want to speak about it. Now, imagine that for the longest period of time, me sitting on Pakistan TV, I've been saying that, you know, if there's some resource that we cannot tap in, okay, let's forget about that. But there's this one resource that we could always tap on, and that too we could do it every single day, and that's human resource. And that's exactly what the Honorable Prime Minister spoke about over there, that the labor for Malaysian industry needs to come in from Pakistan. It's going to be cheap and then skilled as well. So these interventions, now when we speak of these interventions, what happens is, unfortunately for me to say that, but I'll be dead honest over it, there's a lot of red tapeism. You know, there's a lot of bureaucracy which actually comes in it. So we might witness this diplomatic ascent, but what we really need to kind of do is that we need to resolve problems within that. For example, if me as an industrialist, as a private sector member, go to any bureaucratic office, you know, they should treat me like, as if I'm somebody they need to help, rather than creating difficulties. How do you think, it's about time that the bureaucracy really needs to like kind of sit down and be like, hey, you know what, we need to make sure that there's ease of business for people. People who are coming are being facilitated, rather than them thinking that we are those individuals who are actually being enforced onto them?
Well, first of all, as far as investment into Pakistan is concerned from Malaysia, the largest potential that I see is in tourism.
Okay.
Because as far as other industries are concerned where you can take advantage of cheaper labor in Pakistan, first of all, the labor has to be trained enough to be able to cater to that industry.
True.
But more than that, if you look at world trends today, labor is getting less and less important because artificial intelligence and automation is replacing labor. So even if I want to work on cheap human labor, I cannot compete with the robots.
True.
And that's what's going to be at the end of the day. So when we gear ourselves for the future, the greatest potential is in tourism.
Okay.
And the other one, of course, is in IT and artificial intelligence.
True.
Now, these are the growing fields. Malaysia is already strong in this. Pakistan's technical expertise in IT is also world-class, and it offers value for money. For example, India today is exporting more than $250 billion worth of IT. We are exporting barely $3 billion. Now, India's currency is more than 3 times ours.
True.
Okay? And our training is at par with India. So even when Indian IT professionals go to America, they need 2 to 3 years training by those American companies. So you basically need a basic grounding. We have that and more. So that is where the potential is. And in tourism, it's an incredible potential because Malaysian companies are not only huge in Malaysia, they are working in 50 or 60 other countries, Genting and other companies like that, that have massive chains of hotels and resorts all over the world. So, you know, these are the potentials that we need to exploit.
With
Thank you so
artificial
much,
intelligence,
Thank you so much
technology,
for informing us about these integral points that we need to know and the
I like
audience
Eesha, you
needs
know
to
how
know.
every time you thank
Yeah,
every time our
just-
guest has answered something, she's like, oh, thank you so much, sir. Thank you
because
so
they
much.
inform us about such integral things, and I truly enjoy. But just to wrap this up, what really piqued my interest is that you pointed out tourism, and during this 3-day visit, it was highlighted how Pakistan has a lot of beautiful places, Gilgit, Hunza, Nanga Parbat, and Malaysia actually has such a successful tourism model. How can we actually adopt that, embed that in Pakistan?
Well, as I said, we have a great deal to learn from Malaysia. So when we have more interaction between companies and people and all that, we are bound to do better. For example, in the growth of Malaysia, there were certain very basic factors that they wanted to tackle right from the start. In industrialization, they made Perwaja a big, oil giant. They created proton, sorry, not an oil giant, a steel giant. And these are the basic industries you need for industry to grow. And they made their own vehicle. Now you need to think to yourself how much money we are spending in importing cars from Japan and now China. If we were able to have a viable vehicle which was 100% made in Pakistan, we would save billions of dollars over there. I'm talking about what we can learn from Malaysia. In many cases in Pakistan, people say that, you know, our tourism will never prosper unless you have clubs and alcohol and whatnot. Well, Malaysia is an example. I've been to Malaysia and seen thousands of tourists coming from Islamic countries over there. And they're very happy and very much at ease moving around there.
But they still have clubs.
No, they do. But what I'm saying is that, you know, the population of Malaysia, basically, they are a majority of Muslims.
So
about
they tap onto
80%.
the tourism industry, basically.
But what I'm trying to say is they don't go out of their way to promote clubs and things. And that is why you have more tourists wearing hijabs, coming from the Middle East countries and feeling more comfortable because overwhelming majority of people who cater to them are also dressed the same way, behave the same way. It's a comfort level. This thing can easily be replicated in Pakistan.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Mr. Nasir, for being with us. It's lovely to be in conversation with you. It's always wonderful to be in conversation with you. You're so well versed. You're always on point. And thank you so much, you know, for sharing your insights onto this wonderful trip that the Honorable Prime Minister has made, or the official visit the Honorable Prime Minister has made to his counterpart's country, Mr. Anwar Ibrahim, the Malaysian Prime Minister in Malaysia. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to have you over here.
Thank you for having me.
And certainly one day, I think, you know, whenever I'm going to grow older, I think that I'm going to grow just like you. For everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we're heading out towards the short break. Don't go anywhere. When you come back, let's move on towards a more serious issue where, you know, it's the peace talks taking place in Egypt. What's happening? What's the outcome? That's something that we will be talking about. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Good morning.
Okay, welcome back to all the people who stay tuned to stay informed. We are going to move on to a more serious discussion, a more serious segment regarding a humanitarian crisis that is going on around the world, addressing the Gaza war. The 20-point peace accord is being discussed, and all eyes are on Cairo, where mediators from the US, Qatar, and Egypt are signaling a cross-section between Gaza and Hamas, how probably peace talks can be achieved to achieve a truce. To speak more about this integral issue, we actually have a very, very informative guest that we will be talking to today. She happens to be Zepp, the founder and president of the SHILLER Institute. Thank you so much for joining us today. And let us hop on to our first question regarding how delegations from Israel and Hamas and the United States are joined by mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and are holding a meeting. We see global protests and outrage regarding the Gaza issue continuing and increasing diplomatic pressure for a ceasefire. Do you think this will end up being conducted into a ceasefire for the genocide? And wrapping this up and concluding it finally.
Well, I would definitely hope so. And I think many countries and nations and people around the world are hoping that, because what has happened in the last 2 years is just so beyond the imagination of, what these Palestinian people had to endure, that I can only hope that President Trump's plan will succeed. Naturally, there is a big worry, but I think there is a lot of stake also for Israel, because if I would be an Israeli citizen, I would also be concerned, to have a future which is not always threatened with attacks and continuous terrorism. And I think Israel has to not want a situation where it would, because if this thing fails, then I think the mood in the Arab and Islamic populations of the neighbor states would be much aggravated. And I think Israel has to be concerned about its own future. You cannot have neighbors who hate you so much that you will threaten your own existence. So I think I would really hope that the growing peace movement inside Israel, there were many people on the streets in Israel itself demanding an end to the war, not only the release of the hostages, but now also increasingly demanding an end of this atrocity. I would hope that that has an impact. I know the situation in the cabinet is very difficult, but I can only hope that the reasonable part of Israel prevails.
Exactly, and in addition to this, where you mentioned about the flotilla activists, this is something that I'm going to bring to your attention as well, and I would want you to kind of speak about it, where all the 171 detained activists have actually been deported. Now, activists themselves have even stated that horrible and harsh conditions that they were held in. Now, how do you view the atrocious activity or the action, especially as someone who advocates for peace and dialogue through the Schiller Institute?
Well, it is not really a surprise, because, if you have an army which has been trained to not regard certain people because of their racial identity as not being human, it dehumanizes an army. And I think that the people in the Freedom Flotilla had to suffer exactly the same attitude.
All right, thank you for highlighting that. And speaking about this issue, Egypt's president has highlighted how real peace in the Middle East can only be achieved if Palestinian state is recognized as an independent state, and we need to move on to a path of ceasefire. But considering the global climate and the global geopolitical state, do you think a ceasefire can be achieved?
Well, that will be very difficult if you leave it at the level of the discussion right now, because there are strong forces, including Prime Minister Netanyahu himself, who has practically excluded a Palestinian state, and there are even more radical elements than him. I think you need to have an additional approach very urgently. The Schiller Institute has been promoting something which we call the Oasis Plan. That is an economic development not only for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, but to actually develop the entire region, economically, by the development of lots of fresh new water through a building of a system of canals, one canal between the Dead Sea and the Red Sea, another canal between those canals, and then branching out. So you would eventually create artificial new rivers, have desalinization of large amounts of ocean water, greening the desert. My vision of this is that, in a few years, you could have the entire region from India to the Mediterranean, from the Caucasus to the Gulf states, green. Now it's all desert. I once flew in a plane from Amman to Khartoum, or from the other way around, and for 3.5 years, 3.5 hours, you only see brown, brown, yellow, brown. There is no oasis. And I think, if you want to change the dynamic in the region, you need a vision for the future where all the young people in particular have a reason to become scientists, to become engineers, to grow a family, to just have the idea that this horror show of the last not just 2 years, I mean, this is going on for much, much longer, that eventually stops and that a future for all the countries in the region can be built. I think this is eminently possible because China has just announced that they have concluded the largest water management project in history ever. And we had a conference of the Schiller Institute where Chinese professor Zhang Weiwei said that China has the ability to implement the Oasis plan. So if all the neighbors, all the countries, the United States, Russia, China, India, and other neighbors would all say now is the time to really develop the region and create a peaceful future for everybody, I think that's the only way how you could change the dynamic. And that's why I think we should really do everything we can to put the Oasis plan on the table right now.
Exactly. And while we speak of it and, how the pressure is being built as well and how the international powers need to come into play, we have seen that there's been a lot of retaliation. Now, imagine that 250,000 people came out in Amsterdam. People in Turkey came out with slogans or placards saying that starvation is a weapon of war and Gaza is the biggest graveyard of children. So it's evident that Israel's war crimes have created unimaginable living conditions. How do you think, do you believe that the global outcry will still continue to influence the world powers to act appropriately when we speak about the ceasefire?
Well, I definitely think so because, for example, in Italy, there was more than 1 million people in the streets and they have called a general strike, which basically shut down the entire economy. I think that we are seeing right now an earthquake. It takes many forms. I think but it's really the test of morality of mankind, because if we cannot, as a human species, stop a horrible atrocity like that, then I think we have lost the fitness to survive ourselves. And somehow people are beginning to experience that as a fundamental feeling for themselves. So I think, I'm absolutely sure that the whole world community has been politicized in ways I have never seen in my life so far.
And what we're seeing right now is very unfortunate how the ultra-nationalist Zionist parties in Israel are wanting to continue the war. They are mainly being led by their finance minister and their national security minister, who have actually warned if the government does not achieve total victory in Gaza, they will actually bring down the government. And do you think there is a chance that Prime Minister Netanyahu will derail off the peace agreements once hostages are exchanged and restart the war?
Well, there were at least 2 ministers of his cabinet who threatened to, resign. The opposition leader may join. So I don't know exactly what will happen in Israel itself. But I think the answer to that is what I said in the first place, that Israel has to think about its own long-term survival in an environment where you cannot continue to live with the expectation that the United States is going to back you up and all your neighbors are hostile, because inside the United States there are also changes. The mood in the American population is shifting rapidly. There are many people now who used to be hardcore Zionist, Christian fundamentalists, totally in support of Israel. And that is breaking away. So that has naturally an impact on how Trump has to maneuver So I think Israel would do much better if they would just go in the direction of the Oasis plan. And, the Trump plan has elements of that. I think it's not far enough, but I think the danger is there that they will do that. But I think that there are also many thinking people who may consider that, this is not a fight of one day, but you have to think of how the future will be in the long term. And, you cannot risk the existence of Israel by creating such a havoc that all hell will break loose. And, I mean, also in respect, it's now a different topic, but, would Israel be able to have another war with Iran? I don't think so, because there has been a tremendous shift, since the strikes against Iran in June. There are now many more supporters of Iran, like Russia, like China. So the situation is very complex, and you cannot continue a policy of confrontation, which eventually puts your own existence at risk.
Thank you so much, Madam Zepp, for being with us. We were in conversation with the founder, president of the Institute with this, ladies and gentlemen. Certainly, we did talk, and we're going to wrap up the conversation in between where, the peace talks are taking place in Egypt, in between Israel and Hamas's leadership as well. But this, I think, we'll head out towards a short break. Once we come back, we'll transition to the ICC Women's World Cup, which is actually on. Yesterday, it was New Zealand and South Africa, where South Africa emerged victorious. We will have our analysts with us as well to kind of look deeper into what the New Zealand women's team could have done better. We're heading out towards a short break. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. You're watching World This Morning on Pakistan TV. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you so much for staying tuned Pakistan TV, where we're now moving on towards the world of sports. And first up, I think there's great news that everybody needs to know, and that is that Pakistani athletes have brought pride to the nation by winning 2 gold medals at the International Taekwondo Championship. Well, that's great. It's a great news, and the nation by winning the 2 gold medals at the Pugnat Youth Grand Slam International Taekwondo Championship held in Indonesia. Muhammad Ayan Khan won the gold in the 33 kg category, while Muhammad Saim Khan claimed gold in the 30 kg category. The championship featured competitors from several countries, underscoring Pakistan's strong performance on the international stage. Well, way to go. So congratulations to both of these amazing young budding Pakistanis who've actually brought 2 gold medals for Pakistan. I think you can, Eesha, probably participate in the same
Definitely,
category.
That we both are going to apply.
I can't compete in the 30
you will be my mannequin. I will practice on you, and then hopefully I will achieve a gold medal.
No, you certainly do not want to practice on a mannequin where you cannot actually kind of punch on their head.
So I think that's going to motivate me more to become
probably
stronger.
I'll sit down as a mannequin.
We all see how Mulan did great, in her transition.
Yeah.
However, speaking about the ICC Women's World Cup, South Africa performed very well. They were actually able to pull off the highest ever run chase against New Zealand in the ICC Women's World Cup 2025. And to speak more about this, what went wrong for New Zealand, we actually have our sports analyst, who happens to be Syed. Haider, thank you so much for joining us today. Good morning.
Good morning.
Start with our conversation. Thank you so much for your time. As my wonderful colleague did mention, one of the highest runches that we have seen even in this World Cup. What do you have to say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good win for the South Africa. The Tasmin Brits and Sunlow, they have battled very well. 160 runs partnership. It's really remarkable. And we have seen a very good batting technique from Tasmin yesterday against New Zealand. New Zealand is one of the best team in the world of the women's cricket. But South Africa, which manner they have got the target, and 234 runs. It was not an easy target against New Zealand bowling, but South Africa, they have done well. Secondly, I would say that the cricket in South African women's is developing more than the past. At ICC rankings, if you will see, then they are at number 5 and New Zealand at number 7. So it is the significant uh, evidence that South African women, they are doing well. And yesterday, what they have done really, it's a very, very good for the women's cricket. Other teams, they can get a lesson how to chase a target 160 runs partnership. It's a very important for any type of the cricket if you are in the chase. So it's a good sign for the women's cricket, and really it was a good show of the women's cricket yesterday.
All right, and South Africa's fielding was another turning point in the match. They played really well with sharp catches, while on the other hand, New Zealand had a lot of missed fields. Why do you think this was a turning point in the match as well?
Yeah, of course. The fielding is always very important for any type of the match. If you are playing ODI or Test or T20 cricket, fielding is always very important. And how the South African women they have done, it was in the foundation of their victory. I understand that. And New Zealand women's, I think some laziness in the fielding and some gaps and flaws in the fielding that could be also a point of their defeat, that they were not in the shape that to face the West Indies. Their fielding, their bowling was not up to the mark. That was, and fielding always important. It's not only in the men's cricket but also women's cricket. Fielding is a part of the victory of the South Africa yesterday.
Definitely, and it was a tough outing for New Zealand as they were actually celebrating their captain Sophie Devine's 300th international match, and they left the field disappointed. What do you think actually went wrong with them? Was it the batting lineup? Did the middle order collapse? And as we talked about how there was a lot of missfields, how
it was
can
a bowling collapse?
it was a bowling collapse as well
From New Zealand.
New Zealand bowling, as I have said, that their bowling, what we have seen yesterday, I have never seen in the past. Their bowling was not up to the mark, what we have seen. And if you are going to defend a target 230 plus runs, then you have to bowl really a very good bowling, because 230 is not a big target. Maybe for the women's cricket, it's a big target, but in the men's cricket, it's not a big one. So if you are going to face a good batting of South Africa, and in near past, they have done well against Pakistan also in the Pakistan series. They have won 2 matches against Pakistan and other teams also. So therefore, they have to bowl in very indisciplined manner. That was a need of the yesterday match. But we have seen the New Zealand field setting. It was also amazing that they have given a lot of gaps to the South African batters. So therefore, they have got many runs in the third man region, or in the point region, or in the cover point region. So that was a big difference between South African and New Zealand fielding also. That the captain of the New Zealand, I think she was not marshalling exactly how the South African captain they have done. So that could be a difference between both teams. But anyhow, South African, they have done well in the bowling, batting, and fielding. All the departments, they have beaten the New Zealand. Therefore, they are on the victory stand.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Syed, Haider, for being with us. Lovely to be in conversation with you. Thank you so much for taking our time. And Eesha, you've been doing a phenomenal job. You're learning really quickly as well. And I think it's a wonderful contribution or participation in terms of, when we speak about cricket now as well. So I think you've done a great job. And for people who are out there, ladies and gentlemen, that's what it takes to make sure that you enhance the capacity and the ability of the people who work right next to you. And probably, this is how the dream works, because when the team works, the dream works. Until next time, look after yourselves. You watch your world this morning on Pakistan TV. Bye. Have a good day.